This week on Instant Experts, more big names get caught up in the Epstein Files.
Even Gerald Ford is involved, and he's been dead for 20 years.
Well, Prince Andrew is still alive, though, and he's being trafficked to Her Majesty's prison.
Wait a second, that's his mum.
It is too. The Australian Liberal Party has a new leader again.
Henry, is it you? It's not me, is it?
No, you're the next Bill Honky. You're knifing me, remember?
Oh, right. Sorry. I can't keep track, but you have my full support.
And in sport, the rubber hits the road at the Winter Olympics.
And the Norwegians hit the rubbers.
Who knew that Milano Cortina had wild beavers?
Well, the Norwegians clearly.
Welcome back to Instant Experts, the unredacted edition. It's all the latest news explained by idiots, here to keep you sane in a crazy world. I'm Henry Lee, and as always, I'm joined by my dear friend, The Honk. And for the first time, in a shameless attempt to grow the show, we're attempting to be on video.
I have worn underpants specially for the occasion, I think. Let me show.
I tell you what you definitely have, Honk, and that is a very funky Zoom background. What's it called?
Oh, thank you very much. It is called Rustic Sunlit Bookshelf. How about you?
I've gone with luxury real estate tropical private office.
Where's that? Is that on Epstein Island?
Don't jump ahead, Honk. Anyway,
Sorry.
Honk, welcome.
Henry, my dear fellow, great to be here. A delight to be with you on video, to see your smiling, handsome face. And I've got to say, it's a relief to be here. It's a respite.
Right. Why? What, you okay? Everything all right?
Well, look, this is the shows we always say about crooks, fuckwits and morons, and they're fun. But, it's hard to enjoy yourself when family or friends are really suffering,
Right. Someone I know?
You ever met my UK mate, Andy Windsor?
That knob who lives in a castle.
Don't be like that. But yes, Andy or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So I'll try to push on. But anyway, to the show, another truly overflowing hospital bedpan waste disposal unit of a week for the world.
You're talking about the continuing saga of the Epstein Files, of course.
Henry, nuance, please. Ever heard of it? Can you even spell it? Newontz. Not everything is about the Epstein Files. I'm talking about the Middle East.
Right. By the way, I always thought it was spelled nuance, like Beyonce.
Oh, my God, it is. How embarrassing, nuance. As our mutual French-speaking friend would say, touche. But to the Middle East, where I'm keeping a close eye on the suddenly major US build-up near Iran, and it is serious. You got the world's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, is moving into place.
It is in the Straits of Hormuz, or at least, as they've now been called by Iran, the Straits of Epstein. It's a big win for Gerald Ford, isn't it?
What, the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier?
Yeah, I mean, he was president for about an hour after Nixon resigned, and now he gets the world's biggest boat, the military aircraft carrier, named after him.
The Americans are said to be negotiating with Iran, trying to get them to do some combination of not repressing and mass murdering their citizens again, not bombing Israel, not building nuclear weapons, not supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Sydney and Melbourne bikie gangs to blow up synagogues, and Lewis's kosher deli.
Well, they seem, frankly, like good things to be stopping Iran doing. And
yeah, they do.
With the carrier and other forces there near Iran, it's pretty much textbook Teddy Roosevelt, isn't it? Speak softly and carry a big stick, which, by the way, was an approach he first used to settle the Venezuelan crisis of 1902.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When Britain, Germany and Italy blockaded Venezuela because it wouldn't pay its debts.
Never knew that story.
No, and as we discussed last week, here we are again with the US intervening in Venezuela 100 years later.
The Monroe Doctrine, right, of the US managing its hemisphere.
Correct.
So now that's what you'd call it now, the Donroe Doctrine after Trump. But back to Iran.
Yeah, apologies, Iran. So the US is basically trying to stop Iran being an enthusiastic member of the Axis of Evil.
Except the Axis of Evil, like in George W. Bush's formulation, didn't it include Russia and North Korea? And Trump loves them both.
He does. So what is Trump doing with Iran?
For fuck's sake, dummy, he's trying to distract from the Epstein Files.
Of course. How could I be so naive?
Well, it is not going to work, Henry, at least on this show, because that remains the big story this week, the fallout of the Epstein Files. It's all about the Epstein Files, as I said at the very top of the show, if you've been paying attention.
Yes, that's nuance right there, Honky. And you did do a great job covering them last week. I mean, I don't like to give you compliments too often, but you did a fantastic job. A lot of positive feedback from our listeners in a kind of barf in the corner kind of way. What is the latest?
Well, lots has happened, but of course, and this took us even by surprise, the arrest of the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Although the charge is misuse of public office, isn't it? Not sex abuse, at least not yet.
Yeah, that's right. The charges relate to these revelations in the Epstein Files that when Andrew was a UK trade envoy, which he was for about 10 years, Andrew leaked to Jeffrey Epstein, his little, pedo buddy, commercially sensitive documents on investment opportunities, bizarrely in Afghanistan. In return for what? We don't know yet.
Well, do we want to know? I mean, it's incredible. He's the first royal subject to face criminal sanction since the execution of King Charles II. Who's like in the 1600s, who was beheaded, by the way.
I'm guessing Andrew was also beheaded in return for the info he gave Epstein. Look, I was going to say that if I had no class, but I'm not going to say that. But seriously, what a statement, though, for victims like Virginia Giuffre. I mean, talk about the power of activism.
Well, it's the power of having been found to consort with pedophiles, at least in civilized societies and institutions, Hunky.
It does feel like, though, a slapdown that has been 66 years in the making.
Right.
They arrested him. It was his birthday when they arrested him, by the way.
That's a nice touch. Did they burst out of a cake?
Well, on that front, I read this thing in the Times from a writer named Hilary Rose, and along the lines of the goat fucker thing you beautifully read to us last week, I wanted to read this to you.
Yes.
Speaking of 66 years in the making. His Royal Highness Prince Andrew Albert Christian Edward I, born at Buckingham Palace, had a reputation by the time he could walk. As a toddler, he would kick the dogs and taunt the staff. As a 5-year-old, he was thrown in a dung heap by grooms of the Royal Mews, sick of him taunting the horses with a stick. As a teenager, he acquired the nickname Randy Andy, and as a young man, his behaviour was so atrocious that a footman punched him in the face.
I did not know this.
Queen Elizabeth.
I remember Randy Andy.
Queen Elizabeth refused the footman's offer to resign on the grounds that her son had obviously deserved it. 66 years to the day, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is spending his birthday in police custody. It seems very unlikely anyone will have brought him a cake.
Well, Honky, we will obviously be watching that story very closely, but Andrew's not the only one to leave the building, at least professionally speaking, is he?
No, we talked last week a bit about Lord Mandelson, that is Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister's ambassador to the US. We've also now got the Dubai Port CEO, who we also talked about last week, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. He's been forced to resign.
Yes, Dubai Ports, aka DP World, of course, owns ports in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Fremantle. I drive past the Melbourne one all the time. It also sponsors the #2 golf tour in the world, Honk, as I'm sure you know, the DP World Tour.
You always with the sporting angle.
Of course. Now, who else has gotten boned?
Well, just the Sultan, by the way, he's the charmer in the Epstein Files we talked about last week who sent Jeffrey Epstein the torture video of the Turkish girl, remember, to which Epstein wrote back to say that he, quote, loved it. But who else? Norway arrested that former Prime Minister, the one who was tied to Epstein we talked about last week.
What was his name? Thorborn something?
It was close. Thorbjorn Jagland. He's the one, remember, that Epstein was planning with for a meeting with Sergei Lavrov, now Putin's foreign minister, and Putin himself, to brief them on dirt on Trump in 2018. And of course, Trump is definitely not compromised by Russia, and that's the proof of it.
No.
And you told me there was this top lawyer for Goldman Sachs, whose name is Kathy Rumler, who was Obama's White House counsel.
Yes, and I heard that she was on $20 million a year at Goldman.
No more, she's not. She was a frequent correspondent with Epstein and on many occasions accepted gifts from him, clothes, handbags, etc.
Yeah, classy.
She was probably on a public servant's salary at that stage, to be fair. But still...
Yeah, calling him Uncle Jeffrey was a bridge too far, don't you think?
Don't joke about it. She actually did. The good news is she's on the payroll at Goldman until 30 June, apparently, to ensure, quote, a smooth transition.
That just means they put a mattress on the sidewalk to break a fall, because she definitely got marched. Out the window.
Well, at least now she'll be able to sleep on the mattress as well in the Port Authority.
Indeed. Who else?
Well, look, we don't want this to sound like lunchtime roll Long Bay Jail, but there are lots of others. Thomas Pritzker's been forced to resign. He's chairman of Hyatt Hotels and the cousin, of course, of J.B. Pritzker, the Democratic governor of Illinois.
Well, to be fair to J.B. Honk, everyone's a Pritzker in Illinois. They own the entire state, as far as I can tell.
That's true. Larry Summers, former president of Harvard, I believe has taken leave from teaching classes and running a centre for business and government at the Kennedy School.
Yes, I expect that leave might take some time. Might be very, very, very long service leave.
Very long service leave. Casey Wasserman, the chairman of the LA28 Olympics Committee, has resigned and is selling his talent agency.
Right.
Now, he was Chapel Roan's agent. In fact, she dumped his ass from on tour here in Australia when that story broke.
Right. Well, now he'll be appearing at the Pink Pony Club if you're interested in the next phase of his career.
You may not see his face, but he'll be at the Pink Pony Club. A Brazilian pilot in his 60s was arrested on a LATAM flight, like the Chilean airway. He was arrested as part of a pedophile ring. Now, he may well have flown for Epstein and had sex with some of Epstein's trafficked girls and teens.
Oh, my God, that's disgusting. Well, at least jail's going to be interesting for him.
Especially that cell they call the cockpit, right?
One of my favourites actually was a woman named Joanna Rubinstein, only because she was president of the Swedish branch of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Jesus Christ.
Imagine being a UN Commissioner for Refugees and having lunch on Epstein Island with a sex trafficker.
Look, she may well have been paying her charges a visit. My own personal favourite, though, I've got to say, is, of course, a good friend of the show we've talked about many times, who has not resigned yet, although she should. I speak, of course, of Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi,
right,
who clearly could not give a fuck today about child sex trafficking, except in this campaign ad she did in Florida in 2014. Have a look at this.
Florida ranks third nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
Pam Bondi, our Attorney General.
Come on, Honk. That's ridiculous. But to be fair, Honk, that was when the Dow was down at 18,000. Now it's 50,000. Now it's 50,000, so there's no need to worry.
You're referring, of course, to Bondi's insane rant to Congress, the one we played last week about Epstein not mattering because of how good the stock market was.
Exactly.
Which has become this massive. We didn't know how good we had it when we played it. We just played it innocently. It's become this massive worldwide meme.
Yes.
Like, I saw one which was like, my son brought his report home, but before we opened it, he said to keep in mind the Dow is up 50,000. Or someone's done Tom Cruise and A Few Good Men screaming, "Did you order the code red?" And Jack Nicholson has replies, "The Dow is over 50,000.
You can't handle the Dow. It's sort of the new things happen. Remember that?
Oh, yeah,
we covered
yeah.
it last year. Trump said that about the Saudi journo who was cut up by the Saudis with a bone saw in the embassy in Istanbul.
Yeah, we did cover that last year. We covered it like a tarp over a journo cut up with a bone saw.
But Honk, this Epstein thing is such a long way to run, doesn't it? I mean, with so much still to come out. But it's crazy, the number and the breadth of the people involved. I listened to a terrific one during the week that was sent by a listener, a podcast by Ezra Klein, a high-profile columnist at the New York Times, and it was about the Epstein network and how it spans all aspects of, well, he calls it elite. I wouldn't call it elite. Let's call it high-profile society. And he had a great guest called Anand Giridharadas, who was very, very smart and very knowledgeable. And I've got to tell you, it's well worth a listen. But if you don't have an hour and 27 minutes to spare, I can summarize it in a few words. The world is run by cunts.
And the cunts don't care, it seems to me. The cunts don't care that they are cunts and surrounded by other cunts as long as the cunts are powerful and can get them hooked up, paid or laid, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's really no discernible moral compass at all. No concept of right and wrong. Just a bunch of insecure desperados wanting to be the cool kids, plus a whole bunch of sociopaths whose idea of a good time, frankly, is exerting power over other people.
Yeah.
And especially over the powerless. Because, Honk, what is more manly or womanly for that matter? Look at you, Kathy Rumler. Than preying on children who can't defend themselves.
Oh, preying on children who can't defend themselves. I mean, that's so hot right now. I mean, you can barely blame them, can you?
I mean, that's Trump's modus operandi too, isn't it? His raging and admittedly well-founded insecurity means he's constantly trying to dominate others, whether by bullying, groping, patronizing, name-calling, mocking, talking over, or just ignoring.
Yeah, unless, of course, you're Vladimir Putin, in which case you get a blowjob the likes of which the First Lady hasn't given since the 1990s.
Not to Trump, anyway. I reckon the pool boy does okay.
I reckon the personal trainer might get some as well. Jeffrey Epstein,
Yes.
Jeffrey Epstein, of course, himself back in the day, remembering that's how Trump met her.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, on Epstein's plane. In fact, the story goes, I think the first time they had sex was on Epstein's plane.
Oh,
And I don't think there are bedrooms on that plane. I think it was, it's not good.
Oh, give me a bucket.
But look, before we throw up, I mean, the real question remains really, what does this mean to Trump? And it does seem clear, as we started to talk about last week, that he is implicated far more deeply in the files, given what is out already in the files is serious, but so far unproven allegations about Trump raping and beating kids. Given also 50% of the files, as we talked about, still haven't been released, and that in many cases, according to Congress, which has reviewed the so-called unredacted files, 70 to 80% of what has been released is still redacted.
Yeah, and as we said last week, it's not like they redacted the tame stuff, is it?
No, or wasn't it Margaret Taylor Greene you told me retweeted, quote, "There's no need to redact 90% of a Democratic hoax."
Indeed.
Then there's his attitude to the whole thing.
And it's hypocrisy, Honk. I mean, it was all a Democrat cover-up, wasn't it, when he was running for president? Then when he became president, he could not cover it up fast enough or long enough.
This week, he was literally calling for everyone to, quote, move on. In fact, it's even better than time to move on. I don't know if you saw, he said to reporters that he had been, quote, exonerated.
I did not see that. It wouldn't surprise me. But Honk, wouldn't a real president, an actual presidential president from Presidentville, who had a heart, a brain, and a backbone, wouldn't he be out there saying, I will do everything within my power in my time in office and on this planet to deliver justice for the victims?
Yeah, you mean as opposed to running around claiming he's the victim because, again, to paraphrase last week, the fact he was best friends for years with a goat fucker makes everyone think that he too likes fucking goats. Outrageous.
Exactly. Well, Honk, regrettably, much more on this to come in future episodes, but now it's probably time for our weekly shout out to listeners, possibly my favourite part of the show. And we have a lot of listeners all over Australia, of course, except Darwin.
No hache falta decir.
Is that Espanol, Honky? Does that mean it goes without saying?
Si, senor.
No Spanish listeners, I don't think, Honky, although we do have a listener in Panama. So
there could be a chance.
We've also got listeners in Baia Mare in Romania.
Hello.
First time in Romania, I think.
Hello.
Mombasa in Kenya.
Hello, Kenya.
And of course, we've got listeners all over the US and the UK.
Yes, particular welcome to new listener Hawko from Trent Bridge, which is up there in Nottingham, right?
It is. It's a very famous English cricket ground as well, Honk, as I'm sure you know, Trent Bridge, the scene of many great Ashes battles. And Hawko could not wait to point out that in the ongoing T20 Cricket World Cup, Australia has lost to the might of both Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe.
Look, to be fair, Zimbabwe only made 100, but with the rampant inflation, it was 169 by the time Australia was batting.
Doesn't seem fair, but we should still have chased 170, Honky.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Not a big score.
No.
Anyway, Australia's struggling in the cricket, but if Ireland can beat Zimbabwe, Australia can beat Oman, the might of Oman, and Pam Bondi keeps the Epstein Files redacted and the Dow above 50,000, maybe we can qualify for the knockout stages, Honko. Here's hoping.
Well, here's hoping, and thank you, Hawko, again from Trent Bridge. You've triggered Henry completely.
Yes, well, Honk, we also had feedback, this time from regular listener Jake from Woodlands. Jake wrote in to say, quote, I can't countenance the contention made last week by the Honk that as well as being a podcast about crooks, fuckwits and morons, Instant Experts could be considered a podcast made by crooks, fuckwits and morons. I don't believe either of you to be crooks.
Well said, Jake. Only Henry is on the take here.
It's true, Honky. I've stolen all the show's profits. Unfortunately, that did not even cover the bus fare home. I'll be sleeping next to Kathy Rumler in the Port Authority.
At best.
Now, Honky, normally at this time of the episode, we do American carnage. But personally, I think we've suffered enough with Epstein and Iran, because there's also a big story closer to home, isn't there, that we want to cover?
There is indeed. We mentioned it in passing last week, but the Australian Liberal Party, that is the main Conservative party here in Australia, or at least in urban Australia, has a new leader in a guy called Angus Taylor.
Yes, there was a leadership vote. In fact, later the day we recorded last week.
Yeah, now Taylor takes over the Liberal leadership from a woman called Susan Lee, who, and again, we covered this on the show previously, had to deal with not one but two bust-ups with the National Party. That is the Liberal Party's equivalent in regional areas. Together they're known as the Coalition. And generally they trade places with the Labor Party in being in opposition or in government, in power.
Yes, and they're very much in opposition now, aren't they? Don't they have a deficit of like 500 seats.
It's not far off. Yeah, Labor under Anthony Albanese, who, frankly, even though my inclination is to be a Labor voter, I think is no great shakes. Labor's got, if you can believe it, 94 of the 150 seats in our House of Representatives. That is a 52-seat majority over the Liberal National Coalition. To put it even more starkly, there are more women MPs in Parliament on the Labor side than there are coalition MPs, full stop.
So Angus Taylor, the new leader, has a mountain to climb,
He does.
hasn't he? He's got a coalition partner that is basically as reliable as a 20-year-old car. And he's 10 goals down, kicking into the wind in the second half.
Yeah, and you've got more metaphors there than you could shake a stick at.
I think one was a simile, actually. But anyway, the point is Angus Taylor has a hard task.
It's a very hard task. Not only does Angus Taylor have the Nationals to deal with, as you said, the Liberals themselves are wedged on one side by the Teals on the left, and they are the moderate female MPs, well-funded, mostly very accomplished women, many of whose voters are professional, sort of middle-of-the-road former Liberal Party voters in the major cities, especially Sydney and Melbourne.
Yes, and on the right is Pauline Hanson's One Nation, which is populist, anti-immigration / borderline racist, economically challenged, which has captured One Nation, that is many of the so-called Howard battlers who are working class and aspirational voters who are feeling the pinch of the cost of living with high interest rates, high housing costs, and who at one time voted Liberal under the very strongly conservative Prime Minister John Howard, hence Howard's battlers.
Yeah, and so that becomes the question, what do they do? If they soften, it looks like they're playing for those Teal votes. Now, those Teal supporters don't trust the Liberal Party, particularly due to this overwhelming sense, which I think is probably quite fair, that the Liberal Party just doesn't want, or really care about women. And in fact, don't forget, they just dumped a female Liberal leader who wasn't great. In fairness, the Liberals are not going to go centrist under Angus Taylor, who's pretty conservative.
Yeah, and if the Liberals go further to the right, it's a play for those working class voters we talked about who are very bolted onto One Nation.
Yeah.
And they kind of view the Liberals as the big end of town, and the Libs lose even more centrist votes than they have already if they go too far to the right.
And this is not just a problem for the Liberal Party, right? I mean, this is a problem for the country because an ineffective opposition is bad for holding the government to account. You've got a Labor government with a huge majority doing not very much at a time when it's starting to be seriously on the nose over a sense it just hasn't taken the threat, particularly of extremism in Australia, Islamist extremism, white nationalist extremism, seriously enough, and doesn't really have the heart or the mind to tackle it.
Yeah, and my bugbears, they've been maxing out the national credit card, at least until the nice men from the bank come around to collect the bill in about 10 or 20 years' time.
The nice men from the Corleone family with a fish in a newspaper.
Yeah, correct, pretty much. So Labor's budgeting for ongoing deficits, basically because it couldn't be fucked balancing the books. I mean, there's no crisis. There's no reason to be in deficit at the moment, but it is. And they're doing it because they want to buy votes and they don't want to make trade-offs or, God forbid, hard decisions.
Yeah, and in particular in the case of the Labor Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, who's kind of liked as a decent guy, but hard decisions are not his strong suit. No. And I will say, further to your point, I did also see that video that you showed me during the week of the Labor government's Finance Minister, Katie Gallagher, who was telling a Senate committee that the government had saved $114 billion and then had spent it all. And then a Liberal senator pointed out that if you stop spending $114 billion on one thing and then to spend it on something else, that's not really a saving. And when he said that, she accused him of playing word games.
It's a shame we don't have time to play that clip because it was a dead set Utopia episode. It was unbelievable.
And she just didn't know the answer to anything. It was sort of like she stumbled into the wrong room and was covering for another partner at the firm that had just died of a stroke. But I did think Jim Chalmers, the Labor treasurer, I thought he had run budget surpluses there for a while.
He did. He had surpluses for his first 2 years, but that wasn't much fun, he discovered, because he couldn't get laid at parties, basically couldn't buy enough votes. So he's decided to add $100 billion in debt in the next 3 years, again, for absolutely no reason. And that's at a time, Honk, when in my view, there are real things we need to spend money on, like defence and some sort of, sovereign critical infrastructure, because our supply chain is entirely owned by China.
That.
Angus Taylor has a university medal in economics, whereas Jim Chalmers has a PhD in political science, and you can tell from the way he manages the books. So I'm hoping that Angus homes in on a strong message about spending less than we earn, stop trying to tax our way out of a budget deficit, Chalmers style, and particularly promoting productivity improvement, because that's the thing we need to lead to real economic growth.
You are a little biased, though, in this particular case, because you worked with Angus Taylor, didn't you, back in the day?
I did. I worked closely with him for 2 or 3 years. And he is a very, very smart guy and very, very driven. I learned a lot from him, actually.
Well, you'd say he's smart, and I don't doubt it. But the former Liberal Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, who worked very closely with Angus Taylor, described him in the last week as, well, I think we just have to have a look or a listen for yourself. Check this out.
A lot of people say about Angus Taylor is he is the best qualified idiot they've ever met.
Well, Hockey, I'm going to use a line of Malcolm that my sister once used on me. Have you met you? I mean, Malcolm Turnbull was and is an incredibly talented, qualified and successful guy, but he just couldn't handle the competing demands of being Prime Minister and President Emeritus of the Malcolm Turnbull fan club.
Very true. It's interesting, though, the Turnbull comparisons. I think there's a lot of Malcolm Turnbull in Angus Taylor. Taylor probably has more common touch than Turnbull, who I think always sort of came off as a bit of a minor royal.
As opposed to a royal who likes minors.
Oh, well, quite an important distinction these days. Who could believe we live in a world where that distinction needs to be drawn? But like with Turnbull, Taylor's got that same tendency, I think, to try and own the room. And I think it comes off as being underpinned by this apparent belief that maybe is driven by wealth or class background, that he can say anything and no one's going to challenge him. But unlike Turnbull, he is very gaff prone and he own goals a lot. And I don't know whether that's out of arrogance or laziness or who knows. But, just this week, a couple of days into being the leader of the opposition, he blew his own head clean off right. During the week on a must-win and slam dunk issue for the Libs, right, which is immigration after the terrorist attack at Bondi, In an interview on ABC 7:30 with a very tough journalist, Sarah Ferguson, who she knows her facts. And Taylor claimed that Labor introduced a policy to admit 500,000 immigrants a year. In fact, as she pointed out live on air, that was Liberal policy from its last government, and he had no real response. He notoriously fucked up by accidentally posting comments praising himself on his own social media, using his own social media account.
Well done, Angus. Yeah, that was a fail.
And when he became leader of the opposition, like thousands of people posted, well done, Angus. He's not going to live it down. And then there was that thing where he claimed he waged and won a culture war when he was at Oxford doing his Rhodes Scholarship with the American feminist writer Naomi Wolf, until she had to point out they were literally not at Oxford at the same time. So he does weird stuff,
Yeah, he's a very intelligent guy, but I take your point. Anyway, let's give him a chance, Honk, because this country needs smart people in charge, and I'm not sure that we've got them.
Well, we definitely don't have them. I will say Taylor's going to have to move fast. 50% of the Aussie electorate is Gen Y and millennials. We have compulsory voting here in Australia, so that matters. Among those voters, which again is almost 50% of the voting public, the Liberal Party has a first preference vote of 18%, which is even less than One Nation. On a happier note, though, where did your sister use that line on you? Have you met you? It's a great line.
Well, it was when our daughter was very young, and I was complaining to my sister Lee, how stubborn she was, that is my daughter, and foolishly, recklessly, I added the fatal words, I don't know where she gets it from. And quick as a flash, Sister Lee said, have you met you? And to be fair, I think it's probably the best sledge I've ever received.
And with love and respect, having known you for 30 years, may I say, entirely fair.
Yes. Now, Honk, to sport, and you've had a personality transformation this week. Tell us all about it.
Well, so have you, because you've turned the sport report over to me.
True.
After the excitement last week of watching the Australian guy, Cooper Woods, win the gold medal in the men's moguls at the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, he was the guy from Pambula.
Yeah, the oyster-eating love machine from the New South Wales South Coast.
I think the two things are related. Oyster eating and being a love machine, Honk.
They're meant to be aphrodisiacs, aren't they, oysters?
Yeah, because it's all the zinc and it gets the testosterone flowing.
Yeah, anyway, after that excitement, I found myself on the couch with Mrs. Honk during the week.
The oysters kicked in.
Maybe they did, and maybe they didn't. No, this is a family show. Keep it clean, okay? This is a family show.
Except for all the swearing.
Except for all the swearing. Except we call everyone cunts, yeah. Anyway, I found myself on the couch this week watching more fucking Winter Olympics.
Wow.
These two Australian women, Josie Bath and Jakara Anthony, won gold, respectively, in snowboarding and moguls. You can ask me anything.
Wow, I'm impressed. I didn't know that myself. Now, Honk, last week we shared the theory that really the Winter Olympics is just ways Norwegians get around. So where were the Norwegians going this week and by what method?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I am pleased to advise that my close personal friend, the man, the myth, the Norwegian cross-country skiing legend, won his 5th gold medal of this Games in the team sprint. I speak, of course, of Johannes Høsflot Klæbo. And he has a real chance of a clean sweep in the 50-kilometre event on Saturday.
Right. So given this whole thing is Norwegians in transit, The team sprint, I presume, is when he and his mate basically shoot down at the pub on the corner.
Yeah, the pub is called the Coach and Horses.
The kitch with the O's with the lines through them.
Please God, yes.
And the 50K cross country is basically when he's visiting his mum in the next village.
Close, Henry, very, very close. It's actually known in Norwegian as the booty call. Sounds better in Norwegian. On the basis that men in Norway will ski 50 kilometres through the endless dark of the Arctic winter if it is even a 3% chance of getting laid.
Is there a teams event in that too?
Can't pronounce the Norwegian word because my Norwegian's not what it used to be when I was fluent. But in English, it translates as the threesome. It's a test event next Olympics, I think.
I'll make sure they have plenty of oysters, Honky.
Yeah. Speaking of which, do you hear they've run out of condoms in the Winter Olympic Village?
Oh, I didn't. Is that true?
Yeah, true story. Yeah.
Surely they just send your mate. What's his name again?
Johannes Høsflot Klæbo.
Surely they just get him to ski down to the 7-Eleven to pick up some more, don't they?
Yeah, it's only a few hundred kilometres away. It's a warm up. But I got to tell you that he is a good looking fellow with a Winter Olympic record of 10 gold medals and counting, the most of all time of any Winter Olympic athlete. Couple of gold medals clear of anybody else. So I reckon he might be a major part of the no condoms problem.
Right.
But I've got to say the highlight for me, though, even more than Johannes Høsflot Klæbo, the highlight for me was the live cross. I don't know if you saw it, Australia's Channel 9 sports reporter, for the morning update on the Winter Games. And when I say morning, it was morning in Australia, but it was late at night in northern Italy. And let's just say she'd had a few. Have a look or a listen, as the case may be. Check this out.
The coffee over here is actually fine. It's more the price of coffee in the US that we are going to have to get used to. I'm not sure about the iguanas. Where are we going with that one? She is just one of those athletes that you keep in their mind and you just look at them and go, what an inspiration.
That was a dead set. Mate.
To be
Love
fair,
you, mate.
to be fair, she has now apologised.
Good on her. What did she say?
I got no fuck idea. I was absolutely shit-faced when she said it. She's something about an iguana. I don't know.
You were doing Jaeger bombs together.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of such feel-good twaddle. Henry, it is time for the truly most nuanced segment of our show. It is time at last for Cunt of the Week.
This is our first of the year, Honky, at least officially. Is there anyone left, Honk, who's not in the Epstein Files and is eligible for this segment, at least who isn't Australian? As we said last week, this country is proudly not in the files, at least so far.
Well, was it proudly? It was more sort of embarrassingly, wasn't it? We can't even get ourselves into an international pedo ring.
I think we were joking.
Let's just say. But who else is not in the files? Mick Jagger said no, refused to meet with Epstein, it turns out. Joe Rogan, former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. There were a few.
Yeah, so another reason that Mick Jagger is a legend.
Although Kevin Rudd, let's be clear, still fucking sucks. But this segment is not about legends, Henry. It's about cunts.
Okay. Who have you got?
Well, first off, music, please.
I'm a cunt.
Okay, let's keep it short and sweet. We do have a clear winner this week, but first, honourable mention to Louisiana's Rutledge Dees the Fourth. There is, of course, you probably know this, Henry, having spent the amount of time you have in Louisiana. There's a famous saying in Louisiana, quote, no family should ever have more than 3 Rutledge Ds.
No, indeed. I mean, in my experience, even 2 Ds, double Ds, can be a handful.
So true. And triple Ds, forget about it. I mean, unmanageable. Anyway, now we know why they always say in Louisiana, no 4th Rutledge Ds, because Rutledge Ds the 4th has been arrested for, get this, I'm not making this up.
This is true.
True. Is posing as a disabled guy, getting caregivers to come over and provide, quote, intimate care tasks such as diaper changes. The guy was calling these carers, getting in an adult diaper, taking a huge dump, and then getting them to change him. By the way, this is the 3rd time he's been busted. The first time in late 2019, he did it by posing.
You sure it wasn't 1, 2, and 3 the first 3 times? And this is 4?
It's him. First time he was busted of the 3 was late 2019, where he did the same thing by posing as a fictional disabled brother who did not exist. Also, these dumps...
This is like a movie. It's like Step Brothers, right?
Also, these dumps must have been bad because they evidently took so long to clean up that he's been charged with human trafficking. Now, to be clear, I
don't know where you find this stuff, and I don't want to know.
Now, he's a cunt, but he is still not, as we said, he is still not cunt of the week. That honour belongs this week to the Australian bank Westpac, which, get this, ruined a customer's life over, not making it up, $44.11. Here is the story. Westpac owns another bank in Australia, St. George Bank. St. George, I assume, has a customer called Fiona. Fiona gets an email from St. George, right? Here's the facts. Telling her mortgage repayment figure has fallen, quote, after 10 July, end quote.
Right,
So in that month of July, Fiona starts paying the slightly reduced amount on a date which was after the 10th of July. Except that to St. George, after 10 July really means August. So in July, Fiona had technically, according to St. George, underpaid on her mortgage by $44.11. Now, rather than sort it out in one email or phone call, St. George does what? It reports Fiona, doesn't tell her, reports her to a credit reporting agency as a bad credit risk. Fiona had paid the $44.11 by August. Late last year, 2025, she goes to buy a house for herself and her daughter. All agreed, prices agreed, that she can't settle because she can't get a loan because every mortgage broker tells her the credit agencies all say she's an unacceptable risk. She loses the purchase, and it appears she loses her deposit.
What? Deposits are at least 10% of the purchase price. Often 20. That could be $100,000.
In Sydney, it could be 100 million. So this poor woman, Fiona, the customer, tries to contact the bank, nothing. So finally, she sues them. They don't even turn up to court because then they say the court notice was sent to the wrong email address.
Well, to be fair, it's impossible to email a bank customer service. I mean, it's impossible. It's never been done.
So a judge of the New South Wales Supreme Court orders the removal of the bad credit rating. The bank then magically turns up to court to say, go get fucked. We're not doing it. We can't make the credit agency do anything, and yous can't make us. So the judge says, no fucking worries, mate, and orders Westpac's CEO to come to court to front the judge personally. Then, over that weekend, something incredible happens. They say magic is dead in the world. Westpac St. George turn up to court to announce that magically they have somehow managed to get the bad credit rating removed, the one they had no power to get removed, remember? The judge calls them all total arseholes, pretty much, orders Westpac to pay Fiona's costs. Now the case is headed back for a hearing on Fiona's damages, all over $44.11. St. George, its owner Westpac, you are all cunts, and not only cunts, you are our inaugural 2026 Instant Experts Season 2 Cunts of the Week. Congratulations. Go kill yourselves. Do it in front of the CEO, and please invite us.
Honky, the passion was inspiring.
Can you believe it? What cunts? What cunts?
Having dealt with Australian banks for a long time, yes, is the short answer. Okay, folks, that's all we have time for. Thanks again for joining us in our new season, Season 2. Our first episode back last week was one of our biggest ever, so thank you very much for being with us.
Yes, indeed.
Also, for our first time on video and audio this week, we hope you weren't too appalled.
Why? You look great. How do I look?
I don't know. I had to redact you. Okay. Pam Bondi will release you in about 1,000 years' time.
God help us. Yeah.
Anyway, find us in all usual locations. If you're watching this, you've already found us on YouTube. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. And please share us on your socials, WhatsApp, etc., and rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc. We're really trying to seduce the algorithm. That's why we're going to video. It's not because we want to see our faces on non-TV. But
speak for yourself.
We want to persuade the electrons to send more listeners and viewers to us.
Yes, indeed.
So help us out.
Now, please, as we always say, also check out our show notes, a rundown of what's in the show, which are available wherever you get the show, audio or video. From those show notes, you can send us a text. We'll read it on the show. You can send us a voicemail from our show notes. We'll play it on the show directly. You can read our show notes for even dumber jokes that Henry insists on writing after a few cheeky iguanas with the Channel 9 sports reporter.
That is largely true. And we'll be back next week. From now until the end of April, we're bedding down a new video element, and we'll have to release the episodes a fraction later. They'll probably be out more like Saturday afternoon, not Saturday morning. So sorry to disappoint you if that indeed doesn't thrill you.
Look, we usually like to finish with some audio of particular crookery, fuck witticism, or mortification, but this week, bit of a change. We wanted to commemorate someone special, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who died this week at the age of 84, the American politician, civil rights leader. Probably, I think it's fair to say, probably the highest profile African-American leader in the United States between President Barack Obama and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, also a mad rooter and raging egomaniac, Honk. But that's not important right now, given he just died. So a bit of respect, please. Jesse Jackson actually trained directly under Martin Luther King, which I didn't
know
realise. No, he was a young grad student at the Chicago Theological Seminary when he saw the Selma riots, which were basically the Selma beatings.
Yes, indeed.
Down in Alabama. A bunch of black protesters got beaten up by the cops. And he literally jumped up on a table in the cafeteria at lunchtime and organised a group of students and faculty to go down there to Selma straight away. And that's where he met Martin Luther King, and he went to work for him straight away. Didn't go back to the seminary.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. The only thing I remembered was he was there when Martin Luther King was shot, right?
He was, yeah. There's a photo of him, actually, Jesse Jackson, that is, standing literally right next to Martin Luther King outside room 304 of the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, which is the exact spot King was shot next day.
He came to King's aid immediately after the shooting, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And then he very controversially went on the Today Show the very next morning in the same turtleneck sweater covered in Martin Luther King's blood.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was pretty confronting, and it didn't go down very well in some circles, particularly his rivals at King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, who didn't want Jackson to take over instead of them.
He then ended up running for president, or at least for the Democratic nomination for president, in both 1984 and 1988.
Yes, and in 84, I think he lost to Walter Mondale.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And Mondale would have lost it to Gary Hart. This is one of my favourite scandals of the 80s. Had not Gary Hart been busted enjoying some extracurricular loving on a boat with a young woman named Donna Rice.
Oh, Donna Rice, yeah, that's right. And then Hart was running again in 88, but there were these rumours he was a womanizer, so he famously invited reporters to observe his private life, didn't he, saying it'd be very boring. And they took up the offer and they observed Donna Rice going into Gary Hart's townhouse at night and not leaving. She was also then photographed on his lap on a boat. And wasn't he wearing a T-shirt which said Monkey Business Crew?
He was. And as far as the press was concerned, that was no further questions, Your Honour. We rest our case.
Yeah, although from memory, it turns out that Monkey Business was the name of the boat, but it still was a bad look for a married man, probably bad look for a guy in the Epstein Files, to be honest.
And of course, times have changed. Trump has cheated on all of his wives, including with a porn star, and that's completely fine.
Hey, that's different. He's a Republican.
And she was pretty hot, Donna Rice.
She was beautiful.
Anyway, it was very tough for her. She was a bit of a Monica Lewinsky figure of her day, and Donna Rice had to lie low for 6 or 7 years. But then she came back into public life, and she's done a lifetime of work since to help keep children safe online via an organisation she led called Enough is Enough.
Didn't she do a campaign for an athleisure clothing brand called No Excuses? And the tagline was, I make no excuses, I only wear them.
I didn't tell you that. You must have had a few of those catalogues back in the 80s.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hopefully you can still open the pages.
I never received those catalogues from P.O. Box 774 in your capital city.
Anyway, the point of it all is the Democrats went with Walter Mondale in 1984 and Michael Dukakis in 1988. Dukakis got absolutely pumped by George Bush Sr., who was taking over from Ronald Reagan, who put Walter Mondale through a table.
Yeah.
The point of all that is no Jesse Jackson.
No Jesse Jackson. Partly because the Democrats were just not ready for a African-American presidential candidate. But of course, the other reason it went bad for Jackson in 1984, and he never really recovered after that, was an indiscretion of his own.
Right. Was that more monkey business? Because
that
was a bit
late,
of a naughty boy. He had a illegitimate child from memory.
That was the late 90s. No, in 84, it was anti-Semitism, legitimately. Very strange story. He was caught talking to reporters, including a reporter from the Washington Post, who he somehow thought would not publish what he said when he referred to the Jewish population of New York City as, quote, Hymies, and New York itself as Hymietown, remember?
Right. Hymy being obviously a derogatory term for Jewish people.
And Jackson being a derogatory term himself for saying it. But yes, Hymy derived from the name Hyman, which was a popular first name for Jewish men in America at the turn of the century.
Yeah, Hyman Roth from The Godfather 2 was a famous fictional Hyman based on a Jewish gangster.
On Hyman Roth, The Godfather Part 2, did you see, I know we're meant to be wrapping up, did you see that Robert Duvall died this week at the age of 95?
He did, yeah. Tom Hagen, he was in The Godfather 1 and 2.
Yeah, he was
the consigliere.
He was. And Western miniseries Lonesome Dove, he was Lieutenant Kilgore in Apocalypse Now.
Yes, he was. I'm halfway through rewatching that, and I literally, maybe a week before last, watched again the famous scene of him saying, I love the smell of napalm in the morning when the lunatics are surfing while the bombs rain down. And he started his screen career as Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird way back in 1962. I think a non-speaking part.
I think that's right. But
made a big impression.
He sure did. My own favourite of his, I've got to say, for which he won the Best Actor Oscar, is a film called Tender Mercies in 1982, which is a beautiful film, unmissable if you've never seen it.
I've never seen it, but superb. I know you've always liked it.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's dead. Robert Duvall, not Jesse Jackson. Actually, no, Jesse Jackson's dead as well. So back to him.
Yeah, so 88 we said, was the end of Jesse Jackson's presidential aspirations, but he did remain a prominent voice, you'd say, for African Americans until his death, and also for what he called a rainbow coalition, which, from memory, brought together people of all different colours and creeds. He famously said at the 1984 Democratic Convention, just after he'd missed out on the nomination the first time, that his constituency was, quote, the desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised.
Yeah, he had a wonderful way of words.
He did. He did.
Let's be frank, that's a message we can all get behind. So, in fact, to commemorate that and to commemorate Jesse Jackson, we'll finish with a couple of audio and video grabs. My pick is a young Jesse Jackson on Sesame Street in 1971. And if you're listening, not watching, he's a very, very cool looking dude. He kind of looks like a Marvin Gaye almost, big afro, good looking guy, talking to a bunch of kids from all backgrounds. And he sort of does a preacher style. He was later ordained as a minister, by the way, even though he didn't finish, he was ordained. And he finishes with a real sort of preacher style call and response message of the famous poem, I Am Somebody. It's really quite inspiring stuff.
It is. Although I must say, I have myself gone in a slightly different direction. I'm presenting to you both in video and audio the classic performance by Eddie Murphy as Jesse Jackson on Saturday Night Live in 1984, trying to apologise for his Jaime and Town gaffe with a very special soul song.
Well, if it's Eddie Murphy, I'm excited. And that's Jesse Jackson really in a nutshell, a man of contradictions, but you got to say he did more good than bad.
Very true.
Okay, folks, that's all we have time for. We'll be back next week on Saturday afternoon, Australian Eastern Summertime. And as the late Reverend Jesse Jackson says, keep hope alive.
And as the great Henry Lee always says,
I am somebody. But more importantly, stupid never sleeps.
See you next week.
I am somebody. I am somebody. I may be poor. But I am somebody. I may be young. But I am somebody. I may be on welfare. But I am somebody. I may be small. But I am somebody. I may make a mistake. But I am somebody. My clothes are different. My face is different. My hair is different. But I am somebody. I must be respected. Protected. Never rejected. I am God's child. I am somebody. Give yourself a big hand.